Peace. Welcome to the C.L. Edwards podcast, where we are reimaging the culture, focusing on spirituality, family, work, health, and community. Your host is author, speaker, husband, and father C.L. Edwards. Now, let's get it started.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is CL coming back at you with podcast number 11, continuing on telling my life story. Now, we left off getting into my middle school, high school years. You know, I've been having discussions with people, and the thing is, being a teenager in the West is very difficult. I was speaking to a imam, and he was telling me, like, this whole idea of a teenager is a new concept in history. It started in the late 1800s, and it never existed before. Before, when you hit puberty, that was it. Childhood was over with. It was time for you to step up and be responsible and help your family as a man or a woman. You were legally able to get married. You were supposed to start bearing children, especially, in time periods where people died at an early age. You couldn't, this whole concept of you're going to wait till your 30s to get married, that wouldn't, in a society where people die in their 40s, it would have been a disaster if people wait until their 30s. So even if people waited until their the mid 20s to get married and have children, it would have been a disaster. But we live in a different time period, highly technical time period. We've extended schooling K to 12. We expect more out of people. So we've extended childhood. But when you're a teenager, you're not quite a child. That's the thing about it. You're not a child, but you're not an adult either. So you're expected to be more mature than a child, but you can't make your own decisions like an adult. And that can be extremely frustrating to a teenager. I can understand that. I understand that clearly. Well, what if you're 16, 17 years old, you're feeling those urges that are natural. You have somebody that you like or love, and they like and love you back. You want to get married to them. Society says you can't do that. You're too young to make that type of decision. But at the same time, the same exact society says you're old enough to commit zina, fornication. You can fornicate. You could even get somebody pregnant. You can decide to have an abortion, or you can decide to keep the child. But you're not mature enough to get married. In fact, in this society today, 2023, you can decide to transition to another gender. You can decide, even if your parents say no, you can decide, I'm transitioning. You can get major surgery on your body. Some of it that can never be reversed if you ever changed your mind in the future. You can do that, but you can't get married. It's what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do in this Western world is so arbitrary, because it's not based on anything, a firm foundation. It's not based on anything divinely revealed. It's quote unquote democracy, where people just decide, whatever the majority of the people think. But then the other side of that is these changes that have gone on in our civilization. Did people initialize those changes, or did people at the top echelon of the society decide these changes should be done? Then they use the media to get people to buy onto it. The average everyday person, the average everyday guy or girl, man or woman, living in Kansas somewhere, they're just trying to survive. They're trying to go to work. They're trying to pay bills. They're trying to make sure the house doesn't get foreclosed. They're trying to make sure their insurance doesn't get cut off. And they're trying to just enjoy themselves on the weekend. Maybe put a little bit of money away for the kids' college. A lot of these major changes that have gone on in our society, they didn't want this. They didn't ask for it. It's something that was pushed upon them. And then the powers that be, they're going to keep pushing it upon people and make them accept it. And now the whole thing is they want to push it on other nations, other civilizations. People on the other side of the planet that have nothing to do with us. They have to buy into it now. It makes you wonder, where is the world going? What direction are we actually going into? And 20 years from now, 25 years from now, 50 years from now, where will this world be at? Will it actually be in a better place? Some people who have a ideological bent to them, they're into this, the extreme liberalism thing. They think it's going to be better. I don't think it's going to be better because as I've been doing this series, I'm reliving my childhood and the progression of my family. And has it gotten better? No, it hasn't gotten better. If you can listen to the timeline, go back and listen to the 2 other episodes. Did it get better? It didn't get better. It got worse. In my own community, in the African American community, did things get better? You can say, well, we got integration. And for some people, integration, yeah, that's better. So if your integration is a measurement of better, I guess things got better. But what if you look at socio-economic things like, okay, besides integration, did black wealth increase? No. Black wealth has not increased. Black wealth has stayed stagnant since the early 1900s, since we got out of slavery. It hasn't increased at all. His black power, and I'm not just talking about people marching, with the Black Panthers. I mean, actual power of, wealth will be included in that decision making. Black people being at the heads of organizations, things like this. Has that improved? Not really. The foundation of a community is marriage. Has the marriage rate improved? No. People, not just the black community, all around, regardless of race and color, people are getting married less. People are staying married less, and more children are born out of wedlock. Is that improvement? I guess if you're a hardcore, extreme feminist type person, maybe you look at that as an improvement. But I don't think the average person sees that as the average everyday person, man or woman. I don't think they see that as an improvement. Well, I digress. Back to the teenager thing. It's hard to be a teenager. And it was hard for me to be a teenager. I was no longer the little boy that was coddled by his mom, that everybody thought was cute. Being harassed by the police, all these new expectations on me, all these new responsibilities thrusted upon me. And a lot of times, when you grow up in a situation like me, in a single parent home, not to down single mothers, we're just talking the truth. When a boy is raised in a single mother household, a lot of times they just aren't prepared to step into manhood. It's just a fact. They just aren't prepared. They're not mentally prepared to do that. Now, physically, they're getting bigger. They've grown up. I got bigger. I got taller. I got physically stronger. I had the body of a young man. But where was my mind at? Looking back, my mind was not, I had the mind of a child. And that's why I wasn't a leader. I was a follower. I was following behind what some of my peers were doing. I didn't take my intelligence and my talent and use it to better myself and to contribute to the world. See, when you're an adult, you take the talents and the intelligence that Almighty God has given you and you maximize them. You maximize it, however you got to do that, whether that's through college and university, whether that's through reading, contemplation, wrestling with yourself, purifying the self, tazkiyah, as we say in Islam. And you maximize these things for your benefit, but not just your benefit, because you can't just be selfish. You maximize it for the benefit of others, for your family, whether it's your blood family or the ummah or your wife or your husband or your children or your friends or your community that you live in, the city, the state, the nation, the world that you live in. so everybody can benefit from the gifts that Almighty God has given you. But when you don't do all that, you're immature, you're unproductive. You're nowhere near reaching your peak, and you're not even on the road to reaching your peak. And that's where I was at as a teenager. I was smart, very intelligent. I was gifted. I had lots of gifts, lots of different gifts that I had, and I was not utilizing them at all. I was spiritually dead off the correct course. Like I said before, I was born and raised in the church, like typical African American family, Baptist. Yeah, by the time I was a teenager, all that was over. I didn't have time for that. Why didn't I have time for that? Because my peers didn't have time for that. That wasn't cool. So what I want to do, sit around and have a Bible study? Like you're some type of weirdo or something? No. No, you got to hang out on the block. I wanted to get out on the block. I wanted to get outside. You know, I thought that was adulthood because I had also some bad influences inside the house as well as outside the house. You know, when you grow up when you're in the inner city type environment, like I spent some of my time in, because I went back and forth. You know, if you've been listening, I went back and forth between the hood and the suburb. So I spent half my childhood in the hood and half my childhood in the suburbs, and that in of itself was confusing. That by itself was confusing because what do you identify with? How do you behave? What's the proper way to behave? The hood says one way that is properly it gives you one identity, one way of behaving. The suburbs give you a different identity and a different way of behaving. What happens with a lot of kids, especially in single parent homes, because the single mother, a lot of times, we're just being honest again, they're economically disadvantaged. That child spends the first part of their life in the hood, and that first part of your life is an extremely important part of your life. That's the part that sets your foundation. That's the part where your personality is built. That's the part where, things are set inside your subconscious mind. And you spend that part in the quote unquote hood around people who are economically disadvantaged, don't know anything about personal finance. People who are intoxicating themselves, people who have addictions, people who have the lifestyle of people who are economically disadvantaged in the United States of America or Canada or the UK or France or wherever it is you're in the West. It's the same story. Whether you're in LA, Chi-Town, Chirac, or Toronto, it's the same song when you live in the hood. But it's the same song when you live in the suburbs. Yeah, if that child spends their formative years in a suburb, in a $400,000, $300,000, $500,000 house with parents, even if it's a single parent, that person's a lawyer, an engineer, a doctor, whatever the case, they're going to a school that's fully funded. The kids come from the same exact environment, so it's reinforced even when you go to school. The kid has a different identity. The way they look at themselves, the way they look at the world, their worldview is completely different. How they look at money, how they look at you, how do you behave is completely different. So, I was a teenager with identity crisis, identified more with the hood, mainly because my father and my uncles, they were hood. My dad and my uncles, they were all hood. And those are the men in my family. But the women in my family, they went to university. But when you're a young boy, you don't want to, a young kid, this is something single mothers don't understand. A young boy doesn't want to imitate his mom and his uncle and his aunties, I meant to say. Most likely a boy is not going to imitate his mom. He's not going to imitate his aunties. So, yeah, just because you and the women in your family, you go to college and you get university degrees and you get a bachelor degree, master's, even doctorate, that's not necessarily going to it might transfer to the daughter, but it may not necessarily transfer to the son. But see, you had a child with a man who was, you know, psychologically immature and had issues. The son, even if he's not even around his dad, he's going to incline to the dad more. He's going to incline to the uncles and the cousins, the male cousins more, and what they're doing. Because that's how a young man becomes a man through imitation. He imitates those who are in his environment. And that's what I did. Imitated the people in my environment. So in my twisted, ignorant way of thinking as a young man, I thought when I can drink my first 40 ounce of beer, I'll be a real man. You know, that was the highlight for me. When I remember I had my first cup of beer. I was 12 years old, and I smoked some marijuana at 12 years old, and I was able to drink my first 40 on the block. I thought that was I had a milestone of manhood. I had a milestone of manhood. I'm on the block. I'm with the guys. I drink my first 40. I ain't no kid no more. I'm not a kid no more. Nah, I'm not a kid no more. Gotta respect me now. I thought that was a big thing. I thought it was a big thing. And then you live that type of lifestyle where you're intoxicating yourself. You have very low expectations, you know. And again, I'm not thinking about AP classes. I'm not thinking about SATs, ACTs. I'm not thinking about writing essays to try to get money for college or get accepted to a particular college. That's none of that is on my mind at this particular time in life. You know, I'm doing these low level activities thinking they're making me an adult. They're making me somebody because that's what all I can identify with. And also because of the low self esteem, not having my dad there and knowing that my dad had addictions and my dad was homeless at one point. Seeing my uncles, they have addictions. Looking at my neighbors, like every household, people have addictions. Every household, everybody has somebody that's an alcoholic, or somebody that's on crack cocaine, or someone that's on heroin. Like people are poor. They don't have good jobs, if they have a job at all. But if they have a job, it's the lowest level job. Police coming through, harassing everyone, beating people, arresting people for the wrong thing sometimes. And then the people who are actually doing crimes, somehow they never get arrested. That's the craziest thing about the hood. The people who are actually doing bad, they seem to never get arrested or harassed. It's the person who's innocent. He's the one that gets harassed. It's crazy. It's crazy. But see, living in that type of environment, being around that, and seeing other people like that, it lowers your self-esteem. And African Americans, for the most part, and there's exceptions to the rule, but as a group, we have low self-esteem. We have low self-esteem because of, do I have to go through everything? It's well known. When you're designated to be the bottom, of course you have low self-esteem. So you don't have high expectations for yourself. And by the time I was 17, I had no expectations for myself. I remember by this time I was in adult ed, night school, and a teacher looked at me and they were like going through my file and they were like, listen, you don't have enough credits. You're not going to graduate on time. You're going into the 12th grade. You're not even going to graduate on time. You know that, right? Even if you got serious right now, you probably wouldn't graduate until you're 18, 19 years old, 19. And I think the teacher, he was a white guy. I think he was trying to do something right. He was trying to be upfront with me and trying to be real with me. I think he thought that was going to motivate me, but it didn't motivate me. It actually made me say, forget about it then. I'm not sitting in school. I don't even like sitting in school right now. You think I'm gonna sit till I'm 19 years old? I'm 17 years old. You think I'm gonna sit another 2 years? Nah, I drop out. So I dropped out of high school. And when I dropped out of high school, there's no motivation to get up in the morning. And life is just about kicking it, getting high, getting drunk. You know, I'm from Detroit, so everybody in Detroit has a hustler's mentality. It's a blue collar city. So you're not going, I wasn't about to sit in the house and sleep all day. I had to get money. So when you're young in a city like Detroit, you don't have education. Either jobs are not available or the jobs you qualify for don't really pay anything except minimum wage. How do you get money? I mean, do I have to spell it out for you? Yeah, you get money any way you possibly can. That's how you get money. And that's exactly what I did. Whatever it took, if it took selling packets of weed, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. If it took taking something from another person that I shouldn't have taken from, I shouldn't take from that person, I'm doing that. If it takes going to a minimum wage job, I'll do that also. I just had that hustler's mentality. And like I said earlier, I came from a UAW blue collar family. Everybody was, worked at the GM, Ford, so that was inside of me. So, like I said, I'm not about to sit. I'm not, my generation, we didn't do the whole incel thing. You're not gonna sit in the house playing video games all day long. We outside and we trying to get money. So I did that, and I did end up going back to school and getting a GED. And the crazy thing about it, my self-esteem was so in the dumps. My whole self-image was so low of myself that I went and signed up for the GED thing, and I dropped out of GED class. You really have to be, man, listen, your self-esteem has to be so, so low for you to drop out of the GED program. But then I went back again. Because actually my mother told me, either go to GED, get your GED, or get out the house. So, shout out to mom. So I went back, and the craziest thing about that is it it reminded me of who I really am, because I lost myself at this point. I was lost, spiritually and mentally, completely lost. I forgot about whatever gifts God gave me, whatever intelligence Allah had bestowed on me. I forgot about all of that. And I took the GED and, general education degree. You say, oh, that's not that much. But I actually got one of the highest scores in the whole entire city of Detroit when I took the test. Bonkers. Like, I got one of the top 4 scores for that time period in that year. I got like one of the top 4 or 5 scores in the city. My score was so high that they put me like, it was like a contest of some sort to win a scholarship to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. So I ended up going to this banquet. I got an award, first of all. I got a picture of this. I got an award, and I got an award for having such a high score and doing so well. And I went to this banquet downtown. I think it was in a Renaissance Center, and it was to win this scholarship to go to U of M. I didn't win the scholarship. Actually, this girl won the scholarship. I think I came in second or third as far as the scholarship. But I mean, that's crazy. I almost won a scholarship to U of M. Kind of reminded me of, man, you might be smarter than what you think. You might be more capable of what you think, but I still wasn't ready. I still wasn't ready to step into adulthood and step into who I really was. So I floundered around for a few more years. Floundered around for a few more years. And I had a girlfriend. She was a preacher's daughter. And her family was so nice. Her family was extremely nice. And they were very nice to me. Her father, he talked to me and he tried to help me. And I remember I enrolled in this program to do training for machinist work and blueprints and stuff like that. And I liked the program. I said, I told myself, you know what? I like this. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to get into this program. But then they made me take a drug test. and I failed. Man, they kicked me out. And I had told everybody about this program and how, I'm going to get serious. I'm going to get my life together. And I just cried. I just cried, man. Bawled out crying by myself. I felt like a loser. It was like a bottom moment. Man, no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, I just fail at everything I do. And I cried, man. I cried like a baby. And I was a 20-year-old man at this point. So some time passed, and the pastor, I'm still dating the pastor's daughter. And it shows you how Allah works. I didn't know anything about Islam. I didn't know any Muslims, but I did know good practicing Christians. Somehow Allah wrote all this to happen, and these people were a good influence on me. In fact, they changed my life really. So he got me and his daughter into a program for learning about IT. And it was in the middle of the hood in Highland Park, Michigan. If you ever been to Highland Park in Michigan, you are in the hood. And I was serious. I'm like, man, I felt like God gave me a second chance because I got kicked out of that last program. How God's giving me a second chance. And I kind of like the idea of technology. Yeah, I like technology. I always liked technology. I always liked computers. I was into computers. In fact, I had a computer when I was young. One of the only people in my neighborhood who had a computer. And I remember doing like little programs in BASIC, like you make the ball bounce across the screen, like at 10 years old, you know. So I got into the program. I had to take 2 buses just to get there. Had to take 2 buses and then walk like 10 or 15 minutes to get there. I didn't care. Did it every day. And the guy who taught the program, he had retired he was in his 40s, like 45 years old. And he had retired from GM. And the guy had retired. He had like $1 million in his 401k. Like I had $1 million in his 401k. He retired at 45 from GM. And he just wanted to give back to the community. He wanted to show people he was a black man in IT, something it was unheard of at this point. This is before 9/11. It's unheard of. Nobody, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody that was in IT. Nobody. So he taught us, and the class was about being a network administrator, and I passed with flying colors. Flying colors. I was the star of the program. And I had to go to this place called New Horizons, where it's like a testing place to get a certification. And I was the only black person there. It was a bunch of white guys. And, I felt a little intimidated. But by this time, my confidence had grown. It really grew. And I just told myself, you know what? Yeah, you're the only black guy here. But your brain works the same way their brain works. Your nervous system operates the same way. God didn't create a white nervous system and a black nervous system. A nervous system is just a nervous system. There's no Western nervous system and a Eastern nervous system. It's just a nervous system. So whatever they can do, you can do. That's what I told myself. And I passed the certification exam. And I ended up getting a job. Even though I only had a GED, I didn't have any experience. Again, God did. Allah did. He got me into a position to meet the right person. And I ended up working for a major financial corporation. I won't say the name of it at this moment, but it's a big time financial corporation working on their help desk. Man, I felt good. Boy. And it shows you if you believe, and if you pray and you believe, prayer and belief does work. I know a lot of people don't think they don't think it works. They don't, and they say, "Oh, I tried it and it didn't work." So you got to have patience. Things don't happen overnight. See that turnaround from the time I went into the GED program at the first time and I dropped out of GED to working in IT, It was a couple of years. Yeah, it was a couple of years, but it was actually more than a couple of years, but it took time, and I had to put in work. You know, as they say, prayer without works is dead. That's true. Allah does not change the condition of a people until they change what's inside themselves. So, knowing all this, I know it doesn't matter who you are or what situation you're in, Allah can change your situation. Allah can change your fortunes. You may come from a single parent home. You may have lived in the hood. You may have come from poor financial background. You may come from a minority group that's discriminated against, hated, that's receiving racism. Don't let none of that hold you down or hold you back. It's Allah, Almighty God, who writes down your future, not people who hate you, not people who are against you. They can't stop you. That's my message for today. Peace be upon those who accept the guidance.